Amen.
I didn't see you walking last night.
Okay. Gentlemen, we're going to get started with our learning sponsors. Okay. Okay, A Year of Learning by Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel Bas Isser, Friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Sabra Bas Chanach Zundel, Friends of Mel Skotsky, Moshe Zelig Ben Mordechai, Martin Lipman and family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana Bas Pius. A Month of Learning, Isaac and Eda Novik in memory of his mother, Miriam Gittel Bas Hanoch Hanach, Perry and Jill Meltzer in memory of his mother, Malka Bas Baruch, and his sister Golda Leah Bas David Halevi. Tova and Leo Zimmer in memory of her mother, Enya Bas Reberel, and her father, Aaron Ben Yosef Mordechai. B. Pizer in memory of her husband, Rav Yisrael Chaim Ben David. Stanley Presser in memory of his mother, Leah Bas Yehuda, his mother-in-law Golda Bas Leber, and his wife Ruchel Mincha Bas Moshe. Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Hensha Ita Bat Chaim Yehuda. David and Sharon Carpel, Rabbi Tzvi and Robin Carpel, in memory of David and Tzvi's father, Zeb Moshe ben Shlomo Yaakov. Carol and Josh Sanborn in memory of her father, Yehoshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. Sarah Alpert and family in memory of her husband, Harav Tzvi Lipa ben Hillel. A Week of Learning by Harriet Goldman in memory of her husband, Hillel ben Gershon, David Sabgir, Judy Sabgir Gannon, and Jonathan Sabgir in memory of their father, Aaron Simcha ben Chaim Sado. Chaim Aber in memory of his mother, Freda Matul bat Shmaryahu. We have a day of learning today, the 14th, by Henry and Bonnie Stamen in memory of his mother, Edel Bas Yechezkel, and also today by Rabbi Dr. Yankee and Malki Honig in memory of his mother, Rabbanit Hensha Ita Bat Chaim Yehuda. May the Shemas have an Aliyah, Crank, Rafiel, Velti, Yeshua, Shem, Latliya, and the Chol B'nai Israel, a good Gaben Shir. Okay. Right. Okay, Kaf Bet is where we should be today. Basically is a continuation of the discussion, debate, clarification of what yesterday's Gemara was. We'll go over it. And then we are going to go up to the top of the Mishnah on Kaf Gimel this morning. Okay, so it's right. So let's come back just really quickly. We saw at the very end, right, of Kaf Aleph Amud Beis, right? The point was that there was the question of the Katani Sefer Hefar LaBa'ala V'hi Lo Yad'a V'Hayta Shoha, right? Yayin Utmei HaMe'otim. We saw that case was presented Einas Sofeget Arba'im. She does not. Why? Gemara suggests there's a stylistic contrast here between where you teach that the woman would get the 40 lashes, 39, and then otherwise not. Okay? Einas Sofeget Arba'im. Tana Nami Reisha. That's why the earlier part taught Sofresha Sofeget, that she does get. And that's where we stopped yesterday. Okay. So what happens? By the way, does anybody need a text Everybody has? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So what happens where the Braita still continues to give us these situations? Okay. So as follows, first line in Kafbet Amud Aleph. Okay. Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Aisha shenadra v'nazir v'nitmeit. Okay, what about a situation where a woman takes on a Nazarite vow and then she becomes tme'ah, right? V'achar kach hefer la ba'ala, and after that the husband then, okay, revokes, nullifies her vow. Okay, mevi'ah chatat ha'of, says the Spraita. She must bring the chatat, okay? Ve'ena mevi'ah olat ha'of. She must bring the chatat, but she does not bring the olah, the bird olah, nor, by the way, does she bring an asham in that case either. Okay? All right? So the implication seems to be that even after the husband has revoked that vow on her part, she nevertheless must bring at least part of the offerings that she has put aside given her tumah situation. What?
What does she do with what's left over?
With what's, well, the point is, that's a good question. Okay? We might think that the olah is a, as we've seen earlier in the Gemara, is a daron, is a gift. Okay, so why shouldn't she bring that? Okay? Right? Yeah? Okay, well, that's before she brought, right? So the question, and what about the asham? Okay, normally wouldn't we expect an asham, okay, in this case as well? And if we're under the opinion, remember this is a back and forth, what we kept saying yesterday, is the husband's statement of revocation severing, or is it ma'aker? Does it totally, right, uprooted, retroactive? So Gemara picks up. If you're going to say that the husband, in my quotes, simply severs it, taite nami olat ha'of, then she should also have to bring the offering, right? Right? Because whatever, if he simply severs it, it means at a certain amount of time between when she says it and the time that he revokes it, she was certainly a valid Nazarite, and therefore she should have to bring it, okay? On the other hand, as we go on, the elamai, so what does that must tell us? According to this Braita, that would seem to imply ma'aker akar. No, that when the husband says something, it uproots it retroactively, as if there was never such a Nazarite vow, and therefore she shouldn't have to bring. But if there was never such a Nazarite vow, chatata of nami lo taite, says the Gemara, then why does she even have to bring the chatas? She should never have to have brought anything in that situation. Hachinami, here too in our case. Vahamani, but then who would have been the, I don't want to say editor, but who would have been the one who presented this Braita? Okay, in this case, who's doing something just for the thought of doing it? No. Okay, so in other words, according to whose view would we say that she must bring at least something? Okay, all right, let's say that way. Okay, has she? Right? Okay, I don't know if it was thinking about it. She must have said it. Mela, she said it. She did more than think. Okay? No. Okay? So what happens? So Vahamani, according to whom? Rabbi Elazar HaKaparhi. It's according to Rabbi Elazar HaKaparhi, who we have seen here before, remember? This is not the first time his name has come up here. Namely, he was the one who says all along that the one who takes the vow and commits is right. The Tanya has taught elsewhere in a Braita. Rabbi Eliezer Hakapar Barebi, right? Omer, he says, Ma Talmud Lomar, Ma Asher Chata Al Hanafesh, the fact that one sins against one's person. And we saw this quotation before in the Gemara. V'chi ba'ezu nefesh chatazeh. With what person is there a sin committed against? Ela mipnei shetzier atzmo min hayayin mikra choteh. But because one holds back, refrains oneself, okay, from the benefit of drinking wine. Therefore, Rabbi Elazar HaKapar says that person is Nazareth, then is a sin situation. Okay, Valo dvarim kal v'chomer. And isn't it possible here that if that's his view, we could base it a kal v'chomer on this perspective, namely, Uma zeh shelo tzier atzmo ela min hayam. Whereas it's possible that one, okay, inflicts on themselves, or you want to translate it a little differently, refrains, okay, upon themselves from wine, nikra choteh, and that person is considered sinful. Okay, hamitzaer atzmo mikol davar, one who refrains from other things, such as, okay, being in a social situation for the cemetery or a funeral or right. In other words, other acts of right, exactly, other kinds of situations. They give that example in Vishnantam Avrami, taking on a tanis. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. All right, so that's the point. So we understand that there is an opinion then that Rabbi Eliezer Kapar would say, as Heshi was asking, because there was some kind of act, at least a verbal act, okay, that he considered inappropriate, he would say you have to bring at least the chatas. Okay? All right, let's go on. Tashma, we bring a new bright, right? The Tanya Behedi. And now notice the lashon here, that it talks, the Braita explicitly teaches. So we would anticipate from our previous examples in the Gemara that this may be what I'll call for the moment, the Shmamina Braita, that is going to give us our final answer. Okay? Why? Ha'isha shenadra b'nazir. A woman declares the Nazareth vow. V'shama chaverta v'amra. And her neighbor, her good buddy there, says, me too. Uba ba'ala shel rishona. And comes the husband of the initial stater of the vow. Vahaferla. And he revokes her vow, right? He muteret, his wife, all right, the wife who made the first vow is permitted. In other words, that does not chal, the Nazareth vow does not apply to her. V'chaverta asura, but her neighbor who said the me too, that vow still applies. Shma mina, and that's what we learned from that. All right, so that's the case. All right, so what can we say from that? That we have an answer, says the Gemara. And therefore we come to the conclusion, based on that Braita, that we're going to hold that when the husband revokes her vow, okay, it is a retroactive uprooting. Cuts it. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. It is a severing from the point that he hears, and at that point. And that therefore there can be some time period when the Nazareth vow is in effect. Okay, that's what I meant.
Okay. If it were retroactive, then the
Right,
neighbor would also not be.
Right, exactly.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Correct, Seth. Okay, I do want, before we go on, okay? I want to point, I made a note to draw your attention to Art Scroll 22A, note number 10. Okay, make a, a mental note or a little circle if it's your own Gemara around that to go back and look at it afterwards. Okay, it seemed to me to be a significant comment there. Okay, let's go on. Rabbi Shimon Omer, what does he say? Im amra la hareini kimotai. What if the woman, the friend, said to her neighbor who made the vow, I'm going to be like you? Is that a clear enough expression? Remember, that's what we've been arguing. Shtehen mutarot. Both of them then would wind up to be permitted. In other words, the second woman would not be in a Nazareth situation.
Because she's not
Okay,
stays like.
right? Because by saying I'm like you, it's not the same as not saying me too or I am, but being like you. In other words, I'm going to be in the same, excuse me, status as you. Therefore, if you're a Nazareth, I'm a Nazareth. But if your Nazarethship is revoked, then likewise, my Nazarethship vow is revoked as well.
It still seems like linguistic splitting hairs.
Correct. All right.
All right.
And that is partly what the Gemara is concerned about. When you make a vow, we saw this in the Darim, we see this here. What is the language? Is the language clear enough? An adequate expression of such a vow? Because Nazarethship is also a vow. Okay? Actually, now you had a question.
What if the second one, what if it's Guz's? The second one is the same as the first one?
Doesn't matter. She says, I want to be just like.
I want to be just like you.
So if she's a Nazir for a little bit of time, she would also be a Nazir.
Exactly.
And she would have to bring a chatas.
According to Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, according to his Shita. Okay?
Well, we also had the distinction, the animals that were selected.
Right. Well, we saw that was a different right, but you're right. Okay, that worthy animals have been put aside already. Okay, all right, let's go to the top of the new Amud. Mar Zutra, Berei Derav Mari Amar. Hi, Hainu Derami Bar Chama. This situation that we've just discussed, he says, Mar Zutra, may come and give us an answer vis-a-vis another question that was asked by Rami Bar situation. The by Rami Bar Chama, why? For Rami Bar Chama asked the following: Harei alai kibasar zevach shlamim mahu. What if the woman made the expression, or a man made an expression that my status is going to be like the meat associated with a shlamim offering?
This object,
Yes, or a piece of meat or an apple.
Right,
this object or this piece of meat is going to be like a shlum.
right.
It's
In
a
other words,
restam, a regular
Okay.
net.
all right, so this is not a vow of Nazirut, but the language, okay, since he's identified it like an offering, okay, normally when we studied Nedarim, we saw for the most part that was often considered a valid enough expression to make it an effective vow, okay? But it is clearly not a Nazareth vow, right? So that's the question. So we're going to go on here, okay? So in other words, is the vow effective or not? Is what the basic question is, right? All right. Now, why is Shlomim so unique? Because at a certain point in time, before the blood is sprinkled on the Shlomim, it is a consecrated item, and therefore it cannot be eaten, okay? But after the blood is sprinkled on a shlomim, what's the status? It is mutter. Okay, one can eat from it. Okay, so the question is does the vow reflect the shlomim status beforehand in its earlier situation, what the Gemara is going to call cold, okay, or pre-sprinkling, or the opposite?
Cold is post.
Okay, so is it cold? Is it post-sprinkling, and therefore would be permitted, and the vow is ineffective, or what? Kimat peace inish, okay, ba'akira mat peace, be'ikara, I'm sorry, mat peace. When the person links it to that item, to the shlomim, do we say he links it in its earlier status,
Right?
okay,
Pre-spritz.
which is pre-sprinkling, right? Odilma b'tsanan namat peace, or do we say it's in its cold or post-sprinkling status, which would then make it permitted, and therefore the vow would be ineffective? Okay, midame, are the comparison of that example and our earlier case really similar? Hatam kevan da'amar hare alai kibasar zevach hashlamim. There in that case, which was Rami Bar Chama's question, where the person said some object, maybe food stuff or something else, is like the shlamim. Afal gav de lachar shenizrak damo, even after the blood of the shlomim has been sprinkled. Mai matzi achil le bachutz. Okay, one finds that they can eat it outside, namely of the temple prison, right? The courtyard, right? Mikdash Kaddish, but nevertheless, it has still a sacred or a consecrated status. Aval hacha, but in our case of the women and the Nazareth, if we're going to consider that it is like the post-sprinkling situation, in other words, it's not effective. Ha'afarla ba'ala. Here our writer specifically said that the husband revoked it, right? Ika da'amre, and there are those who explain it this way. Hainu the Rami Bar Chama, vadai, that here what Rami Bar Chama was talking about was a situation where we're dealing with the initial state, okay?
Why isn't it effective if it's post-sprinkling?
What?
No, if it's,
What did he ask?
his question is why it would not be effective. If it's, why?
You
Because
can eat it.
you can eat the shlum.
So how are you?
How
comparing-
can you say that it's going to be like that? Right, right?
But
okay.
it becomes a meaningless net.
It's,
You don't get
okay,
punished.
so here, Hainu Durami Bar Chama Vadai. Okay, his claim is no, that he's comparing it to the pre-sprinkling shlamim, and therefore in that situation, okay, there would be a parallel.
So the analogy is the spritz is equivalent to the
Hafara, exactly. Okay. Amrala, okay, he says to her, Hareini Nizira be'ikvayich mahu. Okay, what does he say to her?
Mrs. Schwartz says.
She says, I am going to be a Nazareth, follow in your footsteps, so to speak, following your example.
Like,
Okay.
the first lady says.
Right? So that's the situation. One said it, and then the second one responds.
I'll follow in you.
Right? Mahu, what's the situation?
This is just another.
Yeah, another question
another
of
linguistic
language.
question.
Hareini be'ikvayich be'kula milta v'shaya. If she said, I'm going to follow in your footsteps, okay, in all things, then she would be permitted. Why? Because if the husband has, again, revoked her vow, okay, the same way when the first woman was a Nazirite second woman would be his Nazarite. The same way, once the husband revokes the first woman's vow and it's no longer any more effective, so likewise, that second woman also, her Nazarite status is not effective. Okay? Vishaya, O Dilma, Kimikame Delefer La Baala. Or perhaps we're referring to a situation before the husband revoked the first woman's vow, right? Va'asira, and therefore the second woman, okay, remains in a effective Nazarite status. Tashma, listen to the following Braita. Ha'isha shenedra b'nazir. Okay, a woman takes a vow of Nazariteship. Vishama ba'ala ba'amar ba'ani, and the husband heard, and he says, "Me too. I am also." Eino yachol lahafer. Our Mishnah said at that point he is not able to revoke her vow whatsoever. And now we're going to see something we've seen earlier in the Gemara, right? V'isa kadatach, and if you're going to say, or of the opinion, ki amar la hareini be'ikvayich, it is such that he says to her, I'm going to follow in your footsteps. Be'ikara kamatis, then he is linking it to what was originally, right? That case. Lefa la ladida. So the Gemara says, no, you can also say the man, let him go ahead and revoke it. V'lekum didei. And therefore, his vow nevertheless remains in effect, right? Because remember, we said he cannot revoke his own vow, okay? Now, Ella, rather, lav shmamina, rather, don't we learn the following? Bikula de milta matpis. No, it means that when it says, I'm going to follow in your footsteps, it's the entire process. It's the whole thing. Vehilkach hu delo matse mefer. And therefore, that's the reason that we say that he cannot revoke the vow. Exactly, Alan, but he can't revoke his own. Ha'isha da'amra hareini be'ikvayeh. But here, where a second woman says to the first woman, I'm going to follow in your footsteps, he nami muteret. She then would no longer be, because the first woman's husband did revoke, therefore the second woman follows that same pattern and is also its revoked. Lo, no, says the Gemara. Le'olam be'ikara matis. No, we're saying that it's based on the original state, the pre-revocation, okay, situation. Vahacha kevan da'amar la va'ani ke'omer kayem lichidami. No, and it's a situation where, in that case, it's as if he's saying, I am confirming the vow, right? And that's what it's compared to.
Now we're going back to the
Right,
husband.
now the husband, right? So the fact is, if the husband says in that situation, me too, it's more like a confirmation. That's why he can't revoke it. What happens? Ve'i machil. And if he goes and requests and asks a sage to nullify it, ahakamato,
Nullify his
his confirmation. That's what we're going to get to. Ahakamato matse mefer. It's on his statement of confirmation that he must have that revoked by the sage.
What if the second woman says, me too, and doesn't say, I'll follow you? And he doesn't pay for the first one.
That was yesterday.
That was yesterday's Gemara. She's still,
She has, she's another.
She's out, well,
yeah, she's still in that.
But she didn't say, I'll follow you.
Right. Okay. Right. Ve'ilo lo, and if not, not. In other words, so his only, I'm going to phrase it this way, then we'll go on. His only opportunity to have something revoked is not his mayfair, his revoking as a husband her vow. His only opportunity is to ask a shaila of a rav, of a sage, to get his confirmation statement nullified in that case, okay?
So that.
And if he doesn't ask, it doesn't get revoked.
And
So the
then they're both-
confirmation stands,
And they're both Nazir.
and they're both the husband and Herman.
So in effect, the halakhic authority is the silver bullet in this case.
You could call it
Blow
that,
the whole thing.
right?
The long
You could
range
call
Now
it
he's
that.
Tonto.
If they revoke, if
Get him
the
off the
state
job.
revokes his confirmation, that permits him to revoke her vows.
Right,
Yeah, but it's a little more complicated because he has to have a Pesach.
right,
You can't just say, please.
right.
revoke."
In other
He
words,
has to have
because he
a
confirmed already, all right? Let's come back. Because he already did an act of confirmation, it's no longer in the status of his simply being Mayfair. Okay, it comes back to a more, you want to call it stringent or a more, a higher level that in that case. All right, so he, like the sage, needed a petach. Okay, so now the husband would need a petach to be able to cancel hers. Okay, yeah,
Yesterday, I thought when we were going over when that one was, it appears, we used the expression "and I," that's what we learned yesterday, and it's chain, there was a link with the person before, for some reason.
right. That was the big question in yesterday's Gemara, whether you only are linking to your immediate predecessor or you going back to the first person.
Decided it is the person before. The links to the person immediately in front of him. That was, I thought, the
These two
upshot.
verses
Now,
and
this- And this is, so. I thought that was-
Va'ani is canceled if the person you're linking it to is canceled.
So the question is whether, okay, so my answer would then be, since we saw there was a difference of opinion, if your vow is linked to the immediate predecessor and you hold that, then your vow is linked. If your view was it has to be linked to the first person who said it, okay, then that person's vow would have to be nullified for the later
But we
person.
resolved that.
Okay,
It's
No, but I
previous-
thought
it's the
once it's-
previous person, otherwise you couldn't have a
Okay.
chain.
so,
So even if
okay,
it
so
was-
what happened, right, so basically what happened is because we said it had to be stated within a certain time period, okay, so therefore it implied it had to be linked to your immediate predecessor.
Right, but I thought the link was judged just by the word "and I."
Correct.
But here they're not saying that. Here we have to, in order it to be properly linked. it has to-
No, no, Here too, you're linking it to the predecessor. It's just that the language that the person used is
He's
questionable.
dividing two cases.
It's just that the question is, when the person says, "and I," you-
It's not enough.
okay, one is implying that you know what they're referring to. This person, that person said it, and me too, to what they said, okay? But when the person makes a statement, I'm doing what you're doing,
That's strong.
not necessarily, it's unclear. It's unclear as to what the situation.
Person can't ever know exactly what the
We've
person said.
clarified.
All right.
Yeah.
We've clarified and I.
Right.
Now there are other possibilities.
Other,
of how you
other
use
expressions.
words. So if you say, I want to follow you,
All right,
does that mean I want to follow you into Nazirus? Or does it mean I want to follow you wherever you go? So if you go into Nazirus, I
It's
follow
a-
you, and if you go out of Nazirus, I continue to follow. you.
in other words,
That's a
that's,
totally different
it's again, it's an unclear. If we're dealing with a statement that one can have a clear understanding of the person's intent, it's one thing. If you don't have a clear understanding of their intent, okay? If you say to me, I'm gonna go eat at the grill house, okay? So I'm thinking, he said grill house. Does that mean he's going to this Boca Grill? Does that mean he's going someplace else? It's not precise language to know.
But yesterday, wasn't and I accepted as?
And I was finally understood to mean, yes, the person is identifying with the act, okay? And therefore, that's why the person's status is clear, okay? Let's just finish up a little bit more. The person says, Hareini Nazir Va'at. Okay, I am going to be a Nazarite. The husband's saying this, and you, okay, saying to his wife, Va'amra Amen. And she then says, so be it, okay, or yes, okay, or well said, or however we want to translate Amen here. Okay, what happens? May fair. Okay, all right, the husband can, et shala, he can revoke her vow, v'shalo kiyem, but his vow remains, his Nazariteship is going to remain. Again, because we say a person cannot nullify their own vow, right? Or minhu, but we'll challenge this based on the following bright. Okay? Hareini Nazir Va'at. Again, this bright that says, he, the husband says, I will be a Nazarite, and you, towards his wife, Va'amra Amen, and she says, Amen, so be it. Shnehen Asurin. According to this Braita, both of them are in Nazarite status. Ve'im lav, and if not, Shnehem Mutarin, then both are permitted. Why? Mipnei shetala nidro b'nidra. Because according to this Braita, he makes his vow conditional on her agreement. Okay? In this case, on her vow. Amar Rav Yehuda. And Rav Yehuda then responds. Tane, we're taught, mefer et shelah v'shelo kayam. But our text in our Mishnah said that he can nullify her vow, but his remains in effect. What happened? Abai wants to tell us and respond to Rabbi Yehuda. Afilu tema kedetektani. You can even say that it was the way our Mishnah taught. Why? Braita, regarding this Braita that we just cited, Kegon de Ka'amar La. Okay? It's a situation when he says to her, Hareini Nazir Va'at, and he makes the statement of Nazariteship and you, the Katale Nidro Benidra, because there he is making his vow conditional on her vow. Okay? Umatnitin. Now we'll just go over the top of the Amud. But our Mishnah, that's how I'm going to read the Vav there. But our Mishnah on the top, Kegon de Amar La, that's a situation where he says, Hareini Nazir Va'at, I am declaring myself a Nazarite, and you, my Mishum Hachi, Mefer et Shalah, V'Shalo Kayam. But there, it's a situation where Hachi Mefer, where there he is able to revoke her vow, okay? But his vow remains in effect.
What's the difference in language that does?
Okay. Okay, what is the difference? Okay, because in the situation there, maybe when he says Amen, he responds Kadei Dibur, right? Immediately, no, yours isn't any good. But even though he's able to revoke her in that situation, it still remains in effect.
Perhaps we should react.
Avrami, go ahead.
One case it says, Iranian Nazir Ba'at is making her Naziris associated with this.
Right.
So if he can't be made for her because then it's being made for his.
Yeah.
But when he says, already knows about my, what about you? Then he's separating the two. The my goes with the at.
That's what I was gonna say. He's asking-
Ah,
He's asking her.
okay.
He's
I
asking
didn't,
her.
all right, that's interesting, because my text, what I looked at didn't connect to my with it.
And that's why you
Ours
name
goes
her
as-
My, okay. Harini Nizim, Va'at Mai, okay, that would make a lot more sense.
Also has an exclamation point, one, and a question mark.
Okay, all right, I didn't have that. I was looking at the Nikudot with the Korin there, they did not have it there. Okay, my Mishum, okay, very good, thank you. Thank you.
It's always the.
Okay, Zev, did that answer your
I was
question?
gonna say the same thing. When he
Okay.
says Viat, he's asking her, and you, what do you want?
Okay. That would make- Okay, come on.